Man, everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey everyone, Cantonese Cat here, Mara. Monthly chart. It's been pretty sad actually. It's starting the fourth month, bouncing between this volume shelf here and this volume shelf here. Now it's kind of stuck in the middle again. It's starting to kind of find a little bit of support on top of that lower volume shelf right down here. But yeah, it's been bouncing up, down, up, down, up, down, kind of like ping ponging, building a lot of energy over here though. I gotta say that because the trend, if you look at it weekly here, because the trend is still forming higher highs and higher lows, higher highs and higher lows, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, and you just had a little bit of a tweezer over here. I still think that overall, this ping ponging over here, because the primary trend is up, is going to break above. But there's a pretty heavy volume shelf over here has been trying to break above. So we'll see what happens. But so far, this is a monthly chart. It's only 2 days in a month, so this could also have just ended up being a wick. It would not surprise me if price just kind of ended up going sideways for another month before a full breakout. But it will also not surprise me if this ended up being just a wick over here and is finally able to push above all this volume shelf and get above of it and to go from here. The good thing about Mara, and one thing I really love about Mara, is if you put the Bollinger Band, is inside the upper Bollinger Band. Like to me, as far as I'm concerned, it's at kind of top of this lower volume shelf. Price is inside of Bollinger Band, sorry, inside of upper Bollinger Band, and we basically spent a lot of time already back tested this breakout level over here, and we already found that we held. So over here is just some kind of like a little bit of low volume crap before it's really trying to pick its direction while ping ponging over here before going up. That's kind of how I see it. And because it's also not far from the upper Bollinger Band, I think that to me the risk for this is a lot lower, especially after this big giant high volume candle over here. And price just kind of been consolidating for a few months. It still looks like a bull flag as far as I can tell. I like the risk level in terms of risk and benefit ratio. So I'm still in it. I've been buying yesterday a little bit. It did go back down, a lot further, a few percent further, but hey, I'm okay where I'm at. The Bollinger Band is expanding, although it's not expanding as impulsively as CleanSpark or Bitcoin, but it's expanding. And price tend to want to hug the upper Bollinger Band here, so there's no reason to think that it won't get back up above and try to hug it again as it continues to expand. 20-month moving average is crawling up, so this is still a very, very nice bull trend here. You pull up the oscillator, the banker fund oscillator, you can still see that so far, the second day going in, there's not really been any like significant outflow to really change the trend of the inflow trend by whales. There's still a very, very nice inflow trend over here. As far as you can tell, the price continue to go sideways, and you continue to have a increase in inflow, which again continuously it still reminds me of what happened over here. Price kind of went down or sideways, forming a little bit of a flag when the whales continue to have continuous inflow over here for 3 to 4 months before pushing price up a lot higher. I think we might be getting close to the inflection point. If it's not later in the month, it could be next month. But I think that we're due for some kind of a bigger move because we've been going sideways for quite a few months now. Now, the market doesn't own us anything. It can do whatever it wants, but it just makes it a little bit far more likely now that prices kind of consolidate here for a few months for the next move to kind of move above, especially since it kind of happened here, very, very much of an equivalent spot here in terms of 20-month moving average kind of crawling up here and here in terms of consolidation that happened, as well as far as the whale inflow is concerned. There's a lot of similarity between this spot over here and, and this spot over here. Bollinger Band continues to look like it wants to expand up and down, and the trend is still up. Now, in addition, looking at the Bollinger Band, pull out the Ichimoku cloud here, you had a bullish Tenkan Kijun cross over here a couple months ago, and price bounced from the Kijun and Tenkan last month, found it as support. Right now, price is challenging the Tenkan here again on the monthly. And the Tenkan right now is 20.6, and price ended up closing below that for the second day of the month. So we'll see what happens. Ultimately, this might all end up being a wick, or it might actually end up breaking down. Like, there's no way to really know for sure. But even if it ends up breaking down, it's still ranging over here between this volume shelf and this volume shelf. So it's not the end of the world. The important thing is that the trend tends to be still bullish, as shown on a lot of these monthly kind of indicators. Once it's able to break above this volume shelf over here, I think cloud is next. And after the cloud, and after it breaks above 50, it could probably go a lot higher. Because there's really, a lot less resistance levels up above after that. Now, if you look at it weekly, you can see again higher, low, higher, high, higher, low, higher, high. One thing is you pull up the bull market support band, it keeps on finding support. It keeps on kind of break below it a little bit. But right now, price on the second day of the week, the green part right here is the 21-week exponential moving average. The red right here is the 20-week simple moving average. Right now, price is still just closed a little tiny bit below the bull market support band. Bull market support band, as far as I'm concerned, is still kind of serving as support here. It's still very, very much positive slope, especially if you look at the simple moving average of the 20. I still think the price is going to end up being pushed higher, even if it ends up closing below that for potentially like a few weeks. As some of the other stocks that I've looked at have done. Like, it doesn't always have to perfectly support like that. Just because it broke down below for a few weeks doesn't mean much, as long as the moving average is pointing up. If the moving average points up, then it's going to far more likely to serve as a pretty good support rather than resistance. A lot of people are calling this like a double top over here. They're afraid that, if you like to draw a diagonal right here, technically a double top pattern, the target is like something down here, right? But I just want to caution against that, because over here, this also looks a very, very similar kind of situation where you might have like a little bit of a double bottom over here at a W, right? But it doesn't matter what these does, as long as the trend is down. The bull market support band over here is way down, like it serves as very, very, very strong resistance. Basically, you're basically throwing a little tiny ball here, bounce, and somebody came back down because the deceleration is so quick and so strong. Somebody basically slapped the ball all the way down to the ground. As a matter of fact, it bounced back up and then bounced over here a little bit. And then because of how negative slope this is, it bounced the ball back down a lot further. I think right now somebody threw the ball up in the air, is sloping up, is trying to bounce. There is a good potential actually, that all of this is probably just noise. And that if you give enough time for another few weeks, it's probably going to end up bouncing price up even higher. Can you imagine how painful it is for people to hold this when it just kind of ranges over here for a very long time, for like 3 months now? Everybody got sucked in, and then now you have this big giant consolidation here. All the traders, all the tourists probably already left. Right now, the people who are left behind are really looking at trends, thinking this thing is going to go a lot higher. I'm one of them. That's what it is. If you look at the actual weekly trend, the 20 is about 50, is about 100. 100 is starting to point up here a little bit. And the whole bull trend here really didn't start until around January. So this is still a pretty fresh bull trend, but it's a pretty powerful bull trend as far as I'm concerned, especially given the nice separation between 20 and 50 and nice separation between 50 and 100. This looks like a pretty powerful bull trend that has just got started. It doesn't mean the price won't go down a little bit further temporarily. It just tells you that the trend overall is good. If you give enough time, it probably work out. Looking at Ichimoku Cloud here, last week you thought that price was already bounced back above the Kijun here. Thought the price was probably going to go up from here, right? Nope. Ended up going back below over here, but that's okay. I just want to say this. I don't look at the daily very often, but the daily has really just not impressed me at all. Like, look at this falling knife kind of thing here with super low volume. Somebody's trying to mess with you. Somebody's dropping price down in low volume. And so far, I mean, like, this looks extremely fishy here. Even down here, the entire downtrend over here has been on declining volume. And it really looks like the selling volume is really starting to exhaust, doesn't it? Buy volume here, you see that these are kind of pointing up. Buy volume here, you see that these are kind of pointing up. Buy volume, sell volume, buy volume, sell volume. Overall, it seems that the bears may be really trying to get exhausted over here. Like, I don't know what they're doing here on low volume, thinking that this is going to be sustainable. I don't think so. I don't really care about the short-term move. I look at volume, I look at trend, and so far this still looks like a pretty decent trend. Matter of fact, I think that the downside risk for Mara is weird to say. I actually feel like the downside risk for Mara is less than like CleanSpark, just because it's not too far away from like a lot of the support levels there. But I could be wrong, right? I hope both. I chase momentum. I like CleanSpark. I chase momentum. I also like Mara. I like them both. And you don't have to necessarily pick one over the other. Now, in addition to looking at Mara, I also want to look at one that looked very, very similar to Mara, which is Bitfarms. Bitfarms has a very, very similar look to it. On the monthly, it's just not as powerful, but it still looks like a nice bull flag over here. And price has just been kind of consolidating sideways. You pull up the indicator here, the banker indicator. You actually didn't really see a whole lot of outflow of anything over the last 2 days, even though the price kind of went down a little bit. The trend actually shows you that, overall in this particular month, if you just kind of use a bunch of calculation to figure out inflow trend, the trend is still up. It's still way up, even though the price kind of went sideways, maybe even down a little bit here. The other indicators to show you would include the Bollinger Bands, and it's basically doing the same thing as Mara. Bollinger Bands expanding. 20-month moving average is curling up, and right now price is inside the Bollinger Band. So this is actually not too entirely risky as far as I'm concerned. Like, it just hasn't really had this crazy parabolic move yet, even though Wales has been buying pretty heavily over the last few months. The other indicator to look at is the Ichimoku cloud. Now, it did finally had its bullish cross of the Tenkan and the Kijun, even though price is still below both of this. So they might still serve as kind of like a short-term resistance here over the next couple of months or so, because the Tenkan and Kijun can also serve as resistance. But it did have a bullish cross. It did basically tell you that all the price action over here over the last year or two had become bullish, and that this had just started, and that this could potentially end up being a catalyst in terms of indicator. In terms of people looking at these kind of indicators, this could potentially be a catalyst for price to bounce back above both of these indicator lines over here and go up and challenge the cloud. The cloud right now is right above, it's around 5.5. I think by the time if it ends up challenging a cloud over the next few months or so, you could be challenging around $5. And $5 is a very interesting level, because $5 is also right at this volume shelf over here. So this area right here is going to serve as a resistance, right? There's a lot of a lot of stock being exchanged around this price over here. So $5 probably going to serve as a pretty strong resistance. The problem right now is price is still ping-ponging between all these three different volume shelves, 1, 2, 3. And right now we're actually at the bottom of this volume shelf right over here. So not the greatest look for Bitfarms, but again, this is just the beginning of the month, and if you don't look at the monthly, if you just look at the daily, so far the volume really hasn't been that impressive. It just hasn't really been that impressive. If anything, today actually ended up closing with a little bit of like hammer candle. So these are generally pretty nice bottoms. This is also another hammer over here that you can see. This is also another like a hammer looking thing over here that you can see. So this is also another hammer color thing over here that you can see. So these things can potentially serve as like a little bit of a bottom, but this is a daily chart, so daily candle formation may not be necessarily that reliable. But that's what the chart is telling us. If you look at the weekly, And with the weekly Ichimoku cloud, you're seeing that price trying to break back above the weekly Kijun here, unable to do so for a couple of weeks, so it just kind of went sideways here. If anything, short term, it does look a little bit like a bear flag, doesn't it? But it's hard to say for sure because volume really has just kind of been down low here. It's just kind of went sideways over here. So we'll see what happens in the next move. It is still a bit of a higher low compared to over here. So far you still have a pretty much of a nice higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. So far it's still considered to be a higher low. It is still kind of finding a little bit of support right here at the volume shelf. I suspect the week's probably going to end up closing above this, but we'll see. Like, there's no guarantee. And the selling volume has been declining relative to when it first started. So this is the weekly Ichimoku cloud. If you look at the weekly moving averages, 20 above, 50 above 100, stacked the right way. Price is below still very much of a rising 20 over here. So I don't think 20 is going to serve as very good resistance. Now, can you wait for the 50 to come up and back test it to go up before we are going higher? Possibility. If it breaks down below, let's say 1.9, could it mean that you might end up forming a little bit of like a lower low? Possible, right? But the monthly trend is still positive, and the weekly trend is still very much a bull trend. 20 over 50 over 100, 20 is still pointing way up. So I suspect that price is going to end up staying down here for a little bit, but it's going to challenge the 20 or maybe use 50 to kind of bounce up to challenge the 20. And it's probably going to pass because I just don't see this as being strong resistance around over here. That is the weekly chart for Bitfarms. I still think that this trend looks a lot healthier than what it did over the last cycle. And this is a much more sustainable, a slower bull trend that makes a lot more sense. You're seeing a head and shoulder pattern, inverted head and shoulder pattern over here. And this had a very, very nice, huge volume breakout. And right now you just had two back tests over here. That's all this is showing you. It's just a back test. This is a little bit of bull flag, but it's also a back test of this inverted head and shoulder pattern. And it can potentially push price up above to like $5. This also looked very, very similar to Mara, because Mara also looked basically the exact same. There's this big giant level over here around 20. Inverted head and shoulder pattern. Break above, back test. Break above, back test here again. The first back test went a little bit below the neckline. The second back test right at the neckline. So far it looks like it's holding. It didn't want to leave yet, so it kind of wanted to give it a little bit of like a tiny touch. A little bit of a touch. Makes you tingle a little bit inside. Figure out whether or not it really wants to use that as a support before potentially pushing up a lot higher. Maybe. Certainly looks like this is a pretty strong pattern though, doesn't it? It looks like a pretty nice head and shoulder, or inverted head and shoulder pattern that had a pretty big volume breakout. Same thing for Bitfarm. Inverted head and shoulder, big volume breakout. It looks pretty nice. Now, Bitfarm doesn't have the benefit of looking just like the previous cycle, whereas Mara does have that look to it. I want to also go back to Mara to point out one thing here that I found to be very, very, very interesting. If you put a boomerang support band, I find us to be at a very, very similar spot here where you have the boomerang support band kind of went sideways here and then went up, and then it had a peak right here and then went back and touched it a few times before going up parabolically. It kind of went sideways over here and then went up, and it had a little bit of a peak over here and then went back, touched it a couple times potentially before pushing the price up a lot higher. Now, it does look like after it does that, it can end up spending several months not even touching the bull market support band. So I wonder whether or not we're at the juncture here where we're going to find support over here potentially and let the bull market support band kind of push us a lot higher like it did over here. And when things get going so high and so impulsive and so parabolic, that it's going to drag the bull market support band up along with it, but it may not end up touching it for a few months before coming back and use it to bounce. I don't know whether or not both cycles have to play out the same, but it certainly looked like we might be over here compared to over here. Anyway, just speculations, because history doesn't have to repeat. It just have to rhyme. And none of these are absolute statements. All I'm doing is following trend and being patient. I'm not trading these, tiny, like 30-40% moves. That's just not me. I'm crazy. And I'm just crazy. I don't know. I even made a post back here when price is around here saying, oh, people are going to call this a double top and be all scared about it. But the truth is that bull market support band is very, very nicely pointing up. So anyway, I still find this to be a very favorable setup. I'm still in it. I did add a little bit last week. I did add a little bit this week into both Bitfarms and into both Mara. I like them all. I'm going to leave it as that. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good one. Bye.